All right, so let's talk about DNA. So what does DNA actually look like? And this is just going to be an introduction to DNA and its structure. So during class, if you were there that day, we isolated DNA from ourselves, and we just kind of saw this globby, stringy stuff, right? So to the naked eye, we can see globs of it, and it just looks like globby, stringy stuff. And you have to think those globby, stringy things are millions of DNA molecules kind of all clumped together. All right. But if you look under a microscope, it looks much different than this kind of mess. Excuse me. If you looked under a microscope, or if you actually could look using various techniques that scientists look at, you can't really see it under a microscope, but it has this helical structure. So it's kind of twisted. It's kind of like a twisted ladder. It has two sides that kind of just twist together. And it's a very long molecule. But this long molecule is actually made up of individual building blocks. So each one of these little building blocks, as you go down the chain, are called nucleotides. And we're going to learn about those in just a second. And you can kind of think of those as like Legos. And if you put the Legos together, you can build a big structure. Well, that's what happens with DNA. You put all these nucleotides together to build the long structure. So let's talk about nucleotides. So here's how it's spelled. Nucleotides, these are the Legos or the building blocks that build up DNA. Now, these building blocks are actually broken down into three parts. So every nucleotide has three parts. And you got two pictures here, and they basically show the same thing. The one on the right is just more simplified, but the one on the left actually shows the molecular structure. So you got oxygens and phosphorus and carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen. So you have a bunch of different elements that are kind of thrown together to make these molecules. So each nucleotide contains three parts, and you need to know this. There's a phosphate, there's a sugar, and there's a base. And the base is really going to kind of be the most important part that we're going to talk about. So keep this base in mind. But you do need to understand these three parts. You have a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. And we're going to look at how these are kind of stacked together when you take one nucleotide and stack it with another nucleotide. But those are the three parts of a nucleotide that you need to know. Phosphate, deoxyribose sugar, in the case of DNA, it's going to be different in RNA, and then a base. And again, the base is going to be the key here in a minute. And this is what I'm talking about with the base. The phosphate and the sugar in DNA are always the same, but the base can be four different things. It can be something called adenine, something called thymine, something called cytosine, or something called guanine. And I'm not as worried about you memorizing these names. I'm more worried about you memorizing these letters. So you need to know A, T, C, and G. So A, T, C, and G are the four different type of bases that can be on a nucleotide. All right. What else is important about these bases is that certain ones pair together. So C and G always go together, and A and T always go together. You don't really need to understand how this plays into the structure of DNA yet. You just need to memorize that C and G always go together and A and T always go together. Okay? A and T, C and G, they always bind together. All right? This is a way you can remember this. You can remember apples in the tree, A and T go together. Car in the garage, C and G go together. So apples in the tree, A and T go together. Car in the garage, C and G go together. You're going to do a bunch of exercises during this DNA unit where you're going to be pairing these up. So you really need to get this memorized. Apple in the tree, A and T go together. Car in the garage, C and G go together. And let's go ahead and kind of show you how that works. So let me get my pen out. All right, so as I showed you earlier, DNA has two sides. It's like a ladder that's twisted together. So let's say one side has these letters. Let's say it has A, T, C, C, G, A, G, C. Okay? If we had to put the other side, this is where this matching base pairs comes into play. And this matching can also be called complementary. So bases that are matching are complementary. So A is complementary to T, G is complementary to C. So if we want to write the complementary side, the other side of DNA, we're going to do the matching pairs. So A goes with T because apple's in the tree. T is going to go with A, apple's in the tree. C goes with G, car in the garage. C goes with G, car in the garage. G goes with C, car in the garage. A goes with T, apple in the tree. G goes with C, car in the garage. And C goes with G, car in the garage. So you've just built another side of the DNA just by knowing the other side. And that's how it works. That's why the base pairing or the complementary bases are so important. So you need to know how to do this as well. A always goes with T, C always goes with G. All right, so let's look at this structure of the bigger structure of DNA in a little more detail. So again, it's like a spiral staircase or a twisted ladder. It's got two sides to it, so you got one strand shown here, and then you got the other strand shown here. So these two strands link together through the bases. And if you look at kind of how the nucleotides line up, and I think we might have a better, let's look at this picture first. So here's the two sides. So you got phosphate sugar, phosphate sugar, phosphate sugar, phosphate sugar, and then you have the bases that come in the middle. Okay, so you can see the sides, both sides are built with the phosphates and the sugars that are linked together, and then the bases come in the middle to bind together. So you got two sides here. So let me actually draw kind of down the middle. So you got two sides here of DNA, and they kind of come together due to the pairing of the bases here. But the sides of the ladder are actually these phosphates and sugars that are linked together. So here is one nucleotide, and then here's the next nucleotide, and they're linked together. So on this side you have 4 nucleotides, and on this other side you have 4 nucleotides. So the nucleotides just stack up to form the DNA molecule. They're put together like Legos. But I want you to understand that the phosphate and the sugar kind of form the sides, and the bases form the inside. So if you look at this like a ladder, the phosphate and sugar would be kind of like the sides of the ladder that you can hang on to, and then the bases kind of form the steps that you step on the ladder. Those are called rungs. So that's kind of how the nucleotides stack together to make the DNA molecule. Now let's go back to this picture, because it's not straight like is shown here. It's actually twisted. But you still have the bases in the middle, and the phosphate and sugar make this side, or the backbone, which is showed right here. So the phosphate and the sugar here are what form the backbone, or the hand railing, and the base is what forms the steps. And it's like a spiral staircase, and really those are the two parts. You have the backbone and you have the base pairs. And that's really all you need to know as of right now. And I didn't mention the double helix as well. This spiral shape of the DNA is actually referred to as the double helix. So that's kind of the scientific name of the shape of DNA. The structure of DNA is known as a double helix. It's double because it has two sides to it, and helix just means twisted shape. So that's the shape of DNA, is a double helix. So let's go through again what you need to know. You need to understand that A and T go together, and G and C go together. You need to be able to build the other side of DNA if you're given one side of DNA. You need to understand that nucleotides are the building block, or the Lego of DNA, and they're composed of 3 parts: phosphate, sugar, and base. And you need to understand that the base is where the A, T, C, and G is. So there's 4 different types of bases: A, T, C, and G. So if you know all that, you're good to go and move on to the next topic of DNA.